The title of Augustus, the Emperor of Rome, meant back in antiquity that you were one of the world's most powerful people. But being called the Emperor also meant you constantly had a huge target painted on your back. Ambitious men were always lurking in the shadows, and you could be sure that more than one people would be very happy to put a knife on your back and claim this title for themselves. Roman history shows us that only the winners got to write its history. If we look into how famous emperors such as Vespasian, Septimius Severus, or Constantine rose to power, we quickly see how that wonderful veneer of Roman republicanism and respect for the public institutions falls flat on its face, revealing the ugly reality that power was maintained and legitimized by force. But what about those that actually took the step and made their move? Tried to claim the empire for themselves, but failed. These people went down in history as failed usurpers, and Rome had a lot of usurpers. This is where coins come in. I keep repeating myself in this channel that coins were the ancient equivalent of mass media, and this was especially true for usurpers. It was the easiest way of letting the masses know that you had power, and you could back it up with the issue of money. Money meant troops. Troops meant force, and force is what gave you legitimacy. Not all usurpers had the conditions to issue their own coins, but many had access to minting facilities and did. Today we're looking at some of these very unique pieces. As you will see, many of these coins aren't the absolutely best looking pieces in the world, but that's what makes them fascinating. Sometimes their position was very precarious, but they just had to get their image out there, so they issued as many as they could, even if the artistry or the quality was somewhat lackluster, and of course given the fact that their coins are quite rare today. Okay, let's get started. Let's begin in the 3rd century AD, also known as the Crisis of the 3rd century. This was a time of anarchy, with generals declaring themselves emperors left and right. It got to a point that usurpers would kill off other usurpers, like in the case of our first would-be emperor here, a young man called Quietus. Quietus ruled between 260 and 261 AD, and he usurped the eastern provinces with his father and brother, both of them were called Macrianus. They were attached to the entourage of the legitimate emperor, Valerian, and they were responsible for the treasury used to pay for Valerian's war against the Sasanians. When Valerian was defeated and taken hostage by the Sasanians, Quietus seized the treasury in the city of Samosata and quickly bought off the troops to back his claim. His father and brother then went to the west to confront Valerian's son Gallienus. They were defeated and killed. Quietus stayed in the east and issued coins like this Antoninianus, but as soon as the news of their defeat spread, a client kingdom of Rome, still loyal to Gallienus, besieged Quietus. He lost the support of his garrison and was killed off. The coins struck under Quietus follow a similar visual formula to those struck by his predecessors. We see a somewhat unrealistic portrait of the usurper, but at least we can see that he looks quite young, so he was a young man. The legends are the most interesting bit here. Here's where we can see that this was a full-blown rebellion. Quietus claims all of the official titles of the emperor, Imperator, Caesar, and Augustus, for himself, without any official acclamation by the Senate back in Rome. It reads, Imperator Caesar Fulvius Quietus Pius Felix Augustus. The reverse shows the god Apollo carrying a branch, a symbol of military victory and peace. Apollo was closely associated with Eastern sun deities and was very popular in the region. He was also the god of music, so next to him we see this lovely little lyre. The legends read, Apollini Conservatori, or Apollo the Defender of the Emperor, of course. The demise of Quietus is a good hook for us to talk about one of the most successful separatist states in Rome's history. In the Roman East, the threat of the Persians was always a pressing issue. The city of Palmyra enjoyed in the 3rd century a great deal of autonomy, even if it was officially part of the Roman Empire. It was ruled by a king, Odenathus, and his wife Zenobia. As Rome's power in the area weakened, the kingdom of Palmyra became the de facto rulers of the region, keeping usurpers out and defending the eastern frontier against the Persians. Without much Roman support, Palmyrene nobility quickly realized they were in an advantageous position. The client kingdom quickly became an independent buffer state, subject to Rome in nothing but name really. Odenathus was assassinated in 267 and succeeded by his wife, Queen Zenobia, and by her young son, Vabalathus, with his mother as a regent. Zenobia had big plans for this new Palmyrene empire. With the new emperor Aurelian occupied in the west, in 270, Zenobia started issuing coins bearing the portrait of her son. These coins were made in the city of Antioch, by that time under Palmyrene control, and as we will see, they still recognized central Roman authority. That would soon change. So in the obverse we have the image of Aurelian wearing his radiant crown, and the legends read, Imperator Caesar Aurelianus Augustus, a perfect recognition of Aurelian's authority. And on the reverse we have the young Vabalathus. It's very hard to distinguish obverse from reverse. Wasn't for the radiant crown on Aurelian's head, their portraits would almost be identical. This shows how Palmyra was treading a fine line between client kingdom and separatist state. The legends are also quite unique and give Vabalathus a series of titles that put him in a position nearly as prestigious as Aurelian's. We read, Valabathus vir clarissimus, Vabalathus most illustrious man, Rex Imperator, king, commander-in-chief of the army, Dux Romanorum, Duke of the Romans. This fine line would finally be crossed and war between Palmyra and Rome would start when Zenobia invaded Egypt, under the pretense of protecting the province and guaranteeing trade and grain would keep flowing to Rome. Aurelian could not accept this kind of power sharing and would soon invade and destroy the Palmyrene kingdom. This little coin here might not be the prettiest ever, but it's historically very interesting. This is a tetradrachma from Egypt, struck in its capital, Alexandria, around 272 AD. On the obverse, we have the laureate portrait of Vabalathus, in the more abstract style seen on Egyptian coins. Here, Vabalathus doesn't call himself Dux Romanorum anymore, but instead we read Autokratoros Caesaros Valabatos Sebastos, the official titles of a Roman emperor on his own right, showing his independence against Aurelian. Earlier coins of Alexandria still depicted Aurelian and Vabalathus together, but in this coin we see no sign of Aurelian anymore, and you know what that means. Heading to the reverse, we have the image of Omonoia, the Greek interpretation of the goddess Concord, raising her hand in a gesture of salutation, and holding two cornucopias, the symbol of abundance. Egypt was too important for Rome to relinquish it. Aurelian was coming, and poor Vabalathus would meet his end soon. With the official break with Rome around the year 272, Zenobia finally took the step of issuing coins in her own name as well. Sadly, I don't have coins of Zenobia, these are quite rare and expensive, so an image of a coin will have to do. Zenobia styles herself as an empress on her own right, with the title Zenobia Augusta, as she was also queen of Palmyra. She picked a reverse quite fitting of her royal position. Here we have Juno, the queen of the gods, so she clearly connected her own image to that of the goddess. As we can see on the legends, Juno Regina, Juno the queen, but her days were numbered. Emperor Aurelian isn't called the restorer of the world for nothing. In 272, he just invaded the Roman East and quickly reincorporated the whole territory back into the empire, sweeping away the Palmyrene armies. The longevity of Palmyrus' rise to power was, in a good degree, thanks to another separatist state that showed up in the Roman far west, forcing Rome to split its forces between two huge enemies. In 260, the commander Postumus declared himself independent, taking with him the provinces of Gaul, Hispania, and Britain, and founding the so-called Gallic Empire. He ruled for 9 years and was likely the most successful usurper Rome had ever seen. In fact, he's rarely called an usurper, but rather an emperor in his own right, as this new Gallic Empire had its own senate and institutions which validated his rule. Postumus's coinage is very abundant nowadays, proof of how well established he managed to be in his territories. For a while, the purity of his silver coins was higher than that of the Central Empire, a spectacular move to give him legitimacy. But as we can see in this example, probably from 268 to 269, his final years, the steady supply of silver must have dried out, as this coin has much less silver in it. In fact, it just looks like a bronze coin. On the obverse, we have the very well sculpted bust of Postumus, with his characteristic long beard that was emulated by later Gallic emperors, with the legends Imperator Caesar Postumus Augustus. On the reverse, we have moneta, the literal incarnation of coinage and commerce with coins, civilized commerce, with the simple legends Moneta Augustorum. Coins featuring moneta are quite common during his reign, and considering his coinage was generally better than that of the quote-unquote legitimate emperor, this must indicate that Postumus used his coinage as a tool to give him this legitimacy he needed so much. Hoards from the period generally contain both coins from the Central Empire and from the Gallic Empire. And look how curious, usually you find more Gallic pieces, indicating people might have considered coins from Postumus of better quality and chose to hoard them instead. As we move forward in time, the late period of the empire's history also saw multiple usurpers vying for power. Let's go to the 4th century, during the reign of Emperor Valens. A retired army official called Procopius saw the discontent of the eastern legions with the current emperor. While Valens was on campaign, Procopius went to the capital, Constantinople, where he rallied the legions stationed there, claiming his pro-Eastern stance would be beneficial to them, and of course giving them a very generous monetary gift. Procopius, however, underestimated the number of troops that Valens could raise for his cause. His brief reign between September 365 and May 366 ended when his generals saw the precarious position Procopius was in. He was betrayed, handed over to Valens, and beheaded. He managed, however, to issue quite a few coins, of all metals. Here we have a tiny bronze phallus of him, from the Mint of Nicomedia, showing his possessions extended further than just Constantinople. On the obverse we have the bust of Procopius, with a philosopher's beard, something unusual in the later Christian Roman Empire. We don't know if Procopius was a Christian or not, but he served in the army under a previous emperor, Julian, who was a staunch pagan and showed himself on coinage with the same bearded portrait. Could he have been connecting himself to Julian by picking this kind of portrait? Looking at the reverse, we have the image of the emperor, ready for battle, standing up, with his shield by his side and carrying a military standard. Interestingly, although I just mentioned Procopius decided to show himself almost as like a pagan bearded emperor. On the reverse, at the upper right corner of the design, we have the Chi-Rho, an early symbol of Christianity. Apart from that, we have the legends Reparatio Felicitas Temporum, the restitution of happy times, a slogan commonly found on coins of the late empire. Unfortunately, the empire would not be seeing very happy times in the near future. Let's go forward in time some 20 years and look at yet another usurper. This is Magnus Maximus. The case for Maximus here is very interesting. He treads the line between a usurper and an actual emperor in my view. He was yet another discontent general with the emperor, a man called Gratian. He rebelled and managed to beat and kill the emperor in a battle close to modern-day Paris. He nearly beat Gratian's colleague, Valentinian II, but managed to sign a frail truce that lasted for a few years. So during his 5-year reign, between 383 and 388, he issued coins in 3 imperial mints located in the territories he managed to conquer: Treveri, Lugdunum, and Arelate. Let's look at an example from Arelate in southern Gaul. As we can see, the portraits in late Roman coins weren't meant to show the emperor realistically. This portrait is quite similar to that of Procopius, minus the beard. The emperor has the same haircut, wears the same draperies held in place with a jeweled fibula, and wears on his head the same pearl diadem. The legends are straight to the point: Dominus Noster, Magnus Maximus, Pius Felix Augustus. Just as a funny bit, Magnus Maximus actually means the best and the greatest. We don't know if that was his chosen regnal name or if this was his actual name, but damn, that's an ego, huh? To call yourself twice the greatest. On the reverse, we have the image of the emperor helping a female figure wearing a mural crown stand up. That's the emperor literally helping the Roman Republic stand back on her feet. Ironically, that same republican institution, the Senate, would damn Magnus Maximus' memory when Theodosius the Great marched against him and defeated his armies. The legends reinforce this message of Maximus being a hero. It reads, Reparatio Republicae, the restorer, the fixer of the Republic. And to wrap things up, let's look at a very rare coin from a guy that decided to kick Rome while it was down. The year was 411 AD. Rome had been sacked by the Visigoths just a year earlier. A man called Jovinus decided to raise the province of Gaul in revolt against the empire and declared himself emperor. Jovinus was in fact merely a puppet of the Burgundian and Alan kings, two major barbarian tribes that were moving into the empire. By this time, Roman politics was heavily influenced by these Germanic kings that were moving into the empire. Jovinus himself found his end in 413 after being defeated by a coalition led by the king of the Visigoths and Roman troops loyal to Honorius, the reigning emperor. Jovinus met a sad end, decapitated, his head put on display alongside the heads of other usurpers. This tiny little siliqua was a very valuable thing back in the day. Silver was hard to come by, and likely was used to pay for Jovinus' separatist army. We have the bust of the emperor wearing the pearl diadem, and the legends read, Dominus Noster, Jovinus Pius Felix Augustus. On the reverse, we have the image of the goddess Roma, the incarnation of Rome itself, sitting on her throne, holding a staff and an orb with a little victory on it. The irony of this reverse. To mint coins featuring the goddess that represented the very same city he was fighting against. The legends read Restitutor Republicae, the re-establishment of the Republic, adding a whole other level of irony to this tiny, very rare little coin. Being emperor meant having enormous power, but it also meant lots of danger. As we can see, Roman history was full of brave men who tried and failed to rise to this position. Have you got a coin of a usurper? Let us know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.